Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Hanington, and I'm the Public Engagement and Outreach Manager for the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to another one of our wonderful Elephant We Don't See Diversity Dialogue series with the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. This is Michelle and my third year of doing this series together. And so for those of you who maybe are new or unfamiliar, what we do is we read books about diversity, about inclusion, about sometimes books about people's experiences, like in their identities. And we really work to try to learn from them, to recognize and acknowledge and talk about our own biases. Because one of the things we're trying to do here is to model and help other people do exactly the same work themselves when they're watching. So we're really glad that you're here with us. We have a special guest with us again this month. He was here last month too. This is Jose Viegas from the Office of Human Rights. Thank you so much for being here, Jose.
Thank you for the invitation, and I'm happy to join you doing this.
Michelle, who's the CEO. Michelle, what is your title? I stopped. After 3 years, I stopped.
Chief Operating Officer for Public Services.
Okay, I had the COO part, then I was going to make up the last part. So thank you so much. And that's Michelle's with the Prince George's County Memorial Library System, who are our wonderful event partners for this series and so much other of our work. So I really want to give thanks to the library system, and also thanks to Pam, who's doing everything backstage techie. So hi, everybody, welcome. And Michelle, tonight we're talking about this wonderful book, The Opposite of Hate by Sally Kohn. And I'm wondering, before we really get into it, can you just give a little overview of the book for people who haven't read it yet?
Well, I'm going to start with, you asked me to give an overview, but I'm going to start with this statement. It says, the United States was founded on hate, the hatred that justified colonial annihilation of American Indians and that perpetuated the enslavement of Africans. Hate divided the country during the Civil War, and a century later spawned protest movements and backlash movements with activists vying over issues of justice and human rights. And Americans are not alone in this legacy. And that is almost how the book begins. What I would say this book is really about, because when I first read the title, The Opposite of Hate, I thought immediately, this is going to tell us how we love. And this is not about how we love. In fact, she is saying the opposite of hate is not love. And when she goes on to talk about what hate is, and I'm not going to give it away because I really want people to read the book. Because it is mind-opening, I think. Because if you think about one of the things that she even talks about, the energy that it takes to hate. And if you think about it, if something that I'm going to say strongly dislike, a person that you strongly dislike, or something that has really aggravated you, when that person or that thing enters your space, think about that gut-wrenching feeling that you have. I'm sure our blood pressure goes up, that we may get a headache. All of those things that occur inwardly that affect our mental health and affect us physically. So it takes work to hate. It takes work to be angry with someone. And what she is saying is, you can't necessarily move from that space. And she was a Fox News commentator, and she was very liberal. And if anybody knows anything about Fox News, they aren't so liberal. And those were the folks she was up against every day, and found herself in fights with them, and then realized this is not the way. There is a way to oppose hate. How's that do for you? I mean, is that okay, Kyla?
Yes, that was excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, I mean, I will just say that, like, for me, I think fighting against hate is something that I have to do every day. And in the current political climate, I don't think I'm alone in that. I think that it's very easy to be outraged. And when I think bad thoughts about people, I feel okay about it because they deserve it because they're bad. And I mean, I have to fight. I have to work on that, right? Because that's my soul, you know. And I don't necessarily mean that in a faithful way, but I understand that there are people who do. And regardless, like it's our journey. What does it do to our inside of ourselves to be angry or to think bad things or to say bad things about people? And I think that's what you're getting at. I was like, what's the harm? And so for me, this book was really extraordinary because that's basically what I feel like she's saying page after page after page is how do we manage our own selves and why might we want to, like what is the benefit of doing that? And I was really impacted by that.
Just to say, and I too, Michelle, when I read the title, the opposite of hate, was thinking differently, and not necessarily what at the end she mentioned what is the opposite of hate. You know, I was thinking that same way that you were thinking in terms of whether the opposite of hate is love. But one of the things that I liked about this book is how she presented her thoughts and organized the book, because at the beginning it's just she started with something that she did, took it very kind of personal, then she went expanding it into a region like Israel Palestine conflict, and then it went to discussing other kind of bring it back to our community or the country of the United States. So the way that she presented the thoughts and the information, I thought it was very interesting to me because it was personal, then went out, then brought it back to the country, and then brought it back to everybody because of the unconscious bias. I mean, that's to everybody, and then at the discussion at the end of the systems that can contribute to hate. So that's one of the things that I liked, how the book was presented and the information in the book was presented.
I also liked she refers to well, in a video that I watched, said that she talks about insiders and outsiders, but I prefer to think of it as people with power. But she also says that we all hate at some moment. So I was a little disturbed by the fact, because I kind of pride myself on not hating anyone. I mean, I can strongly dislike, but I don't think I hate anyone. And I think so. I had to, something that happened in my life where I was, in most cases, I'm going to say most people would strongly dislike or hate an individual. And I was able to continue to respect. So I'm not saying I'm where Sally is, but I was able to respect. And I think it is only because I don't truly believe that I can hate anyone. I don't like, so for me, if you truly hate someone, if you saw them dying on the street, you wouldn't call 911. And I don't think that I personally could do that. And I think it would eat, if I did, I think it would eat away at me. And I think that's what she's trying to get to. Like you said, Kyla, it is what happens to us internally. Because I think if I said I really hated this person and I walked away from them and they were dying on the street, eventually that would tear my soul up. And I wouldn't be able to live with myself for doing something like that to another human being. Because at the end of the day, regardless of someone's views, regardless of how they treated me, they're a human being. And if nothing else, I think I need to show them how they should conduct themselves. And that is how, and it is out of, and I'm not going to say that I love them, but it's out of respecting them and their views. And I think that's part of what she's trying to get to.
Go ahead.
If I may jump on it, I think it's an interesting point that you're making, right? Because one of the things that even reading these books and the people that she interviewed, none of them acknowledged that they hate, right? They didn't see that. That they were hating. They just those actions that they were doing was something else beside hate. But it's interesting. It's how kind of we kind of move away from the word hate, because what you describe as strongly disagree, it could be my definition of strongly not disagree, dislike. That could be just you lowering down the definition of hating, right? You know, so but because we're not, so it's so and when you said that, it's like I remember of the people that she interviewed, and I remember even the white supremacists that she interviewed, and even the actions that they were taking, or the gentleman over there in Palestine, the actions that he was taking, he didn't consider to be hateful,
right?
Or they didn't see themselves that they were kind of having that, but it just depends on the definition, I guess.
You know, I was thinking as you were speaking, Michelle, that okay, like, do I hate like an individual? You know, do I like so and so? And I was thinking maybe that's not really what I meant. And I think it's more what she talks about in the book is the othering. You know, we're going to borrow a little Edward Said and talk about othering, and she talks about this in the book. And so it's those people, okay? And so who are those people? So, and she mentions, you know, specific, and Jose outlines some of them, you know, Israel and Palestine, mentions Bosnian conflict, Rwanda. But she also talks about things that are more localized. So things that I can touch from where I sit, people who don't vote like me, you know, I hate them. Well, I don't hate them, but they're all kind of stupid, right? This kind of thinking that we have, and I don't think, I'm going to posit that I'm not alone in this. And if I am, y'all can write in the chat and say I'm the only person who's ever felt this way. But I hear people say things, and I hear people say angry and violent things even about entire groups of people based on where they live, based on a presumption about how they vote, and a presumption of how they vote, what that means about them. And I think she outlines this in the book, that she talks about that this kind of othering and reduction and sort of superiority. And so that's the part that for me, I certainly connect with, and I feel like is a battle that we are sharing collectively to try not to other the other. And as you were talking about this idea of something like eating, you know, that if you were cruel, that it would eat away at you. I was thinking in this book, she talks about a time that she was cruel, that ate away at her.
That's what I was just going to
right. And there's this wonderful short story writer named George Saunders. And he did a convocation address to Syracuse University or something. And we're going to put it in the chat in just a second so that you can save it and read it later. But his convocation address, what he talks about in this address is those times when he had these failures of kindness, and really with what you're saying, how it eats away at you. We see her talking about something that she did that was cruel, that ate away at her. George Saunders did a whole university commencement address about this, how that eats away with you. And I'm saying all that to say I agree. I think you're right, that when we are, you know, you talked about someone dying and not helping them. I'm going to back it up and say it's even much smaller incidences of coldness or unfriendliness or cruelty that I think we do carry with us. I mean, I can name names of people that I was unkind to or short with or impatient with. I mean, 30 years later, I can tell you about a time that I was, you know, impatient with somebody or not gentle. And yet that is not necessarily enough to stop me from not ever doing it again. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but this is something I struggle with all the time.
Well, and so she says that even things that I never thought of as hate, she labels things like bullying. And I kind of think of that. And although, adults get bullied too, but I think of that as a middle school thing, and it's kind of like a rite of passage. At some point, everybody's bullied in elementary school, middle school. Um, but what's happening today is a little different. I mean, I'm talking about bullying when I grew up, but she labels that as hate. And she talks, so she mentions this pyramid of hate. And she said at the base of the pyramid of things like stereotyping, the use of exclusionary language, and the belief in the inherent superiority of some groups and the inferiority of others. The next level includes individual acts of prejudice like bullying, name calling, and unspoken but harmful acts of social avoidance. So that's when she told the story about bullying Vicky, and talks about how there was a form of discrimination that she said it turns out Vicky happened to be lower income. Late in life, she learned that Vicky was LGBT. She said she was one of the she says LGBT kids. And she said, and they are always bullied more. And she said there was plenty else going on in my little 10-year-old mind. And she said, I'm not suggesting hate was the only reason I picked on Vicky, or even that I was consciously hateful, but still the same groups of people we discriminate against in our society as a whole are also the groups most likely to be picked on in school. So what does that say? Because I don't think any child comes here to hate. And no child, you are taught that. So we are teaching, I think everybody comes into this world I'm going to say equal playing field. I'm not talking about money, but when you look at differences, I don't think children, unless they are taught that there are differences, can see differences. And if somehow we could remove that, but we have all these other societal things happening that build up and cause the hate. So it's those the other rings that occur. And it is our places of power that we use to lessen people. It's, if we could just use our powers for good all the time. And that's really what I think she's trying to get at. That, we need to. So here's an example I'll use. I was watching Fox News, and so it was bothering me. So my husband is saying, "Why do you listen to it?" I said, "Because I want to know their views. I want to see a different side." So it goes back to everything that we've been saying over the last couple of years, Kyla, that it is really getting to know each other. And that's what she said she had to do. She had to really sit down, hear their points of view. And then, because the other thing is, she says that if you don't do that, you're assuming that your side is right. So if you're right and they're wrong, how do those two things exist? And that comes to a point of, in her mind, a point of hate.
Yeah. And I think I say all the time, I mean, you've heard me say this a million times, I've never changed anyone's mind by yelling at them. Not one time. I have never changed anyone's mind by telling them that they're stupid or they're a jerk. I mean, that's just not how you do it. I mean, and I realize that in today's culture, it's very like, that is not an untypical way of just erasing or shutting people down. And you're not even worth my time. You're not whatever. And it's like, okay, well, maybe, but you haven't made the world a better place. You have done nothing to positively impact. And if your goal is that you want people on side, you want to build a relationship, you want those haters to stop hating, there is only one way to do it. And that is as we've talked about many times, relationship.
Right.
And I think Michelle, I think I definitely agree with the point that when we are born, or even kids, kids don't even come with the idea of hate. I think she cited a scientific information there that I think the psychologists think that if a child is like before 6 years old, they don't have the notion of they don't understand the notion of hating nothing, and so, but then I wonder too, because even though they don't know, they learn from that, from either the parents, maybe not the parent, maybe it's just a society as a whole. It's like hate, or how people use hate. It's for a purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose is always to either maintain the power, have power, or gain power, because even if you see what's going on in the country at this time, is that they're using the hate to kind of entice or bring people to support them on certain things. So hate is being used as a way to gain power and maintain power.
Right.
So it's kind of interesting in that way to me. But and I understand that in order to kind of minimize that effect of, hey, we have to connect with people, but how can we connect when, to be honest, I'm like, how can we connect if we're not willing to listen?
Right.
Well, and I think that's what she kind of gets at, is that she had a lot of presumptions about what she was going to hear, and then when she connected to people, they were just people, just like everybody else, and so she had to get past her own very dense biases in order to be even willing to like make a connection with the other.
But that's it's so difficult, right? I mean, because even
that's why I said it's a daily battle for me.
Yes, it is difficult, because sometimes you hear stuff going on, or some people saying some stuff when you think, because it's just based on your view, when you think like that is completely wrong, that's not even true, or I have to admit, I was doing an oil change. I went to a location and they have Fox News. I was the only one there at the waiting area. So based on certain views, I thought, well, the information they provided, it's not true. So I asked if they could change the television channel, and so that's one example of that we don't want to listen. I guess in my case, I didn't want to listen and learn their point of view, or what you were doing, Michelle, in terms of when you were listening, because you wanted to learn the point of view. I, in that moment, decided, you know what, it's change the channel and to something that was more comfortable, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, it's just difficult to listen some stuff that you would strongly disagree.
Well, yeah, I didn't get that she was suggesting that we listen to Fox.
No. I was just giving examples of how in terms of the difficulty of sometimes listening.
This is one of the things I talk about in my job all the time, where I'll say to people, okay, yeah, I know that you're friends with people who don't look like you, and I know that you're friends with people who don't go to the same church as you, but are you friends with anybody who doesn't vote like you? And that's just like, to really, we live in a democracy. Diversity of political opinion is foundational to our democracy. Are you friends with someone who doesn't vote like you, or who you presume doesn't vote like you? And I think that is the real challenge for our time. And she talks about something in here that if I may read this. I could just read the whole book. We're going to start on page 1. Everybody get a little drink, a little blankie, because here we go. Okay, so here we go. So she is the fundamental attribution error, excuse me, I can't say ours, so error, you might have to jump in for that one for me, is our tendency to believe that when someone else does something hurtful, that person is hurtful. But when we do something hurt for ourselves, it is because our action was justified by some situation or context. So, for instance, when someone writes something hateful online, we think they are a fundamentally hateful person. What they wrote reflects their essence. But when we write something hateful, it's because we were provoked by them, or maybe we just got caught up in the online vortex. It was the situation that makes us mean, not that we are actually mean. And so I love this way that she divides how we experience somebody else doing something. Jose makes a, sorry, I'm going to pick on you, Jose. Jose makes a snide comment to me, and I'm like, Jose's a jerk. I make a snide comment to Jose, and I say, well, he had it coming, or aren't I clever, or I know that I'm a good person. That was just a bad moment for me. And I think this book is, to me, was all about reminding us that if you experience me and I say something that was snide or rude, even, that to have maybe the same compassion for me that you would have for yourself. Michelle, if you said something that was, if you knocked off a one-liner, which I'm sure you never would, but if you had a bad moment and you knocked off a zinger, maybe you're even proud of yourself, that instead of that meaning that you're fundamentally a terrible person, you just knocked off a zinger. And I think what I'm experiencing for myself, and maybe I'm the only one here, but I know that I really find myself experience. I think we just lost Michelle. I do find myself feeling the other, where I lose sight of somebody else's humanity. And what I think is really powerful, and this is what I think what Michelle was saying to begin with about how we have power, is that I can't control what somebody else is doing. I can't control your heart, but I can control my own. And so I have power by choosing to recognize the humanity in the other. Does that?
Mm-hmm. And another thing that to me is like, it goes with what you just mentioned too, is that, the book, it's just in a way is the way you're reading it, and the way if you read it, it's just to kind of let you know that, like you just saying, that people put different levels of hate or they see themselves completely different than what they see as somebody else, right? And so that's one of the things that even in the discussions with the interview that she was doing with the Bassan, I think, from Palestine, what's the whites, the ex white supremacists, is like, they acknowledge the thing, like they didn't see that they were doing something bad, right? They just saw what other people were doing, and they just thought those actions were what triggered them to react in a way, right? So
I think it's this, and I think what she gets at is that if you do something to me, Jose, okay, so I'm just talking from my point of view. You do something to me, so I react, but you deserved it. I'm not a jerk. You deserved it, so that's why I was a bit short with you. Tomorrow when I see you at work, I'm a bit short. Well, it's because you deserved it. Okay, now you've experienced me being short, and you're like, wow, Kyle's kind of a jerk. So now you don't talk to me, and we just go and 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 go.
Yeah,
and I think that's what she's outlining is, there's this saying I love to say, which is, no one is a villain in their own story. We always feel justified in our action. And I feel like she is calling us to try to check ourselves. Welcome back, Michelle.
Sorry, my mom's in the hospital, and the hospital called me twice. So I had to,
are we good?
Okay. Yeah, we're good. I'm good.
Okay, because moms are more important than diversity dialogue.
We're good.
Okay. Welcome back. And we send our love to your mom. So I hope everything's okay.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we're good.
So I was just basically saying that I think we're called to check basically, in summary, I'm experiencing us as being called to check our justification for unkindness. And even if we don't act unkind, I don't think I necessarily act unkind. I try not to. I'm sure I have my moment. I'm human, but I try not to be unkind. But I certainly think unkind thoughts. And I feel like this book is reminding us that every hostile situation, every situation of violence, every situation of isms, the people feel justified. And so we have the power to not be like that ourselves. That's really what I'm taking away from this.
Yeah. And Miss Vivian asked the question. She said, so what is the opposite of hate? And I think you kind of summed it up, Kyla. It really is to check your biases and deal with what's going on inside of you, and also be tolerant of those people who you think are wrong. It's really, I mean, think about arguments. Like you said, it's if I think I'm right, I'm going down fighting. And when people's biases come into play, then according to her definition, yes, and I do show some hate. I disagree with her, but but yes, when biases rear their ugly head, and well, people just aren't considerate of others. So one of the things that happens, like in the library world, and we have a lot of digital content, and people say, well, people can access it on their phones. Well, everybody doesn't have a phone. And then I do get upset when there are folks who believe that everyone does, or if you have a phone, that you also have the data to support you using our digital resources. And that is not the case for everyone. And where my hate comes in is now I have to argue with you to get you to see that, well, to see my point of view.
Yeah.
And that's really what it is. But my point of view in that moment is the truth. It's just everybody can't see that truth because of their place of privilege, because of their place of power. They don't think some things exist. And so when I have that discussion, I need to be a bit more kind. And so according to her, the opposite of hate would be in that moment to maybe show some statistics, to talk about people that would not be able to have the access, to show that we have places in Prince George's County that still can't get internet access. The number of people in certain communities that don't have access. And so I guess I'm supposed to sit down and have a conversation and not be adamant about my position, and be willing to find out why so I guess the question would be, I'm trying to look, this is to help me. So in this instance, instead of being angry and saying everybody does not have the ability to access our digital resources, and don't that everybody doesn't have a cell phone, everybody doesn't have Wi-Fi, everybody, and go through all of that. I guess what I should come to is, so tell me why you believe everyone has access.
She has a section here that I can't find. So I'm just staring down at my book. But she has a section here where she handles this exact thing. I mean, not specifically libraries and internet access, but what happens when someone is saying something that you don't agree with. And she was saying, find the nugget that you do agree with. So that somewhere somebody is saying something. And so it reminds me of this book by Marshall. Pam is going to Google. It's called Nonviolent Communication, and it's by Marshall somebody. And the book Nonviolent Communication, is that really talks about, like, how do we, what do we do? And this is your question, Michelle. Somebody comes in, they're angry, they're agitated. She addresses this in here that if you meet that upset with your upset, or you say, you know, you were wrong and here are the statistics, which you want to do, and it's totally reasonable that you want to do that. That person then, you know, the entrenchment continues. They're here, you come back, and you're right. Your feelings are, I mean, it's not even feelings, right? You have facts. You're coming back with facts. But the person is not able to hear those facts because they're in their feelings. Now you're in their feelings. I mean, you're in your own feelings. Okay. You know what I'm saying? And that to try to communicate.
I'm looking forward, but as we speak,
Right,
you know,
right.
I don't like reading these books on my phone.
Right.
Yeah, but one of the things though that I think, I don't know if you, I think Kyla, you have heard me, and then I know other people have, is that my thing is that if you don't see somebody, you don't care about somebody, right? And so I guess in this incident, in this book, is that what is the opposite of hate? I mean, it's then it's the way that you connect to people, right? The way that you have a conversation with them, the way that you try to understand their point of view. And so and that will, you know, that will make you think not necessarily me against them or me against the person, but is you change your me, you know, to we as a community. So that, I think, to me, it goes with the same thing as if you don't see somebody, you don't care. It's like you need to kind of know somebody or talk to this person or understand their point of view, consider their point of view, have a kind of you know, discussion and try to connect with each other.
So I have a question. If I have the opportunity to connect with someone who sees things differently, but I don't want to connect, is that perpetuating hate?
Are you so? Here's
Go ahead, Kyla.
Here's my thoughts.
And let me tell you where I'm coming from. Because so you know how there's that old adage, if you don't have anything good to say, then you don't say anything.
I've heard that, but so far I haven't been able to internalize it. But continue with your story.
So there's that. And I think if I'm going to if I get in your space and you're going to cause me to be angry when I'm in your space, the best thing for me to do is avoid you. I don't want to hear your point of view. I just don't want to be in your space. So what am I doing when I choose avoidance? I'm not hate. I'm not hate.
But then it's you're not helping in a way yourself, because you know either way, at some point you will start thinking about the action or wondering what this person is saying or you know, and you just, for me, it's just people just distance themselves for maybe miscommunication. I mean, so I think instead of narrowing the gap between you two, it's just being you know, widen the gap between people if they just keep if they do the avoidance.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think it's true that like we all have to survive in this world, you know, and that there are sometimes people that like it's not going to be necessarily fruitful to interact with, or like I can theoretically see how it might be fruitful if I never had any problems in my life and I was a perfect communicator, but because I'm just little Kyla Hanington, maybe it's better just to avoid them. So I think there is a survival, not literal, but like an emotional survival reason, and that may be what you're describing, Michelle, which is like sometimes it's just not worth it to me, and like I don't think, like, we all have to get along. We're all trying to manage, right? And so I think that, you know, that's valid. And I think if we're looking at the way that I experienced this book, this just for me was I did not experience about what do I need to do to make somebody else be a better person. And how should I try to like talk to them so that I can change their minds? How I experienced this book was Kyla Hanington can think jerky thoughts about other groups of people. Kyla Hanington can make jokes about people from Mississippi, by which I mean poor white people from Mississippi. And when you start thinking about it that way, and I'm like, wow, I'm making fun of people based on the color of their skin, their accent, and where they were born. That's happened to me. I'm making fun of people based on their economic circumstances. That's who I am. That's my soul. That's terrible. That's terrible. And when I start to realize it, it's like, wow, I don't want to be like that anymore. But it's very easy to, because you hear something in the news and you got some soundbite and then there's some politician. You know what I'm talking. You all know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
And I have to make a decision to be like, I don't want to pick on people because of their economic. Like, how did I turn into that person? I don't want to judge people based on the color of their skin, based on where they were born. Like, that's happened to me. But it has happened to me. That is inside my heart. And so I have to work about it. And so this book for me was about how do I recognize when hatred blooms inside my chest. And for me, it's been difficult because when I've had those thoughts, I've been like, they deserve it, right? And she mentions this, the basket of deplorables, it's in our rhetoric, the way we talk about the other. And I've mentioned, a certain point of view, but there are other people with other points of view. It's both. I mean, it's not just one side. And I'm reading this book as a call to action for ourselves. So to your point, Michelle, an individual with whom you have some conflict. I mean, sometimes it's okay to just be like, man, I gotta go get a coffee. I think that that's really okay. And because we have to survive. But I think that if you're in your own self, if you are kind of aware that there's maybe a group of people that you dismiss or you kind of roll your eyes about sort of collectively, then I think that the journey that she's requesting that we take is to just kind of like touch that a little bit. And recognize that same feeling in us is exactly the same feeling that other group has that they use to justify cruelty or dismissiveness or whatever.
So she says it. I think you might have said it a little better, but she says recognizing the evil within ourselves and the good in others can deeply rupture our own sense of security. On the other hand, it's the first step to making ourselves and the world around us better. That's what you just said. If we just focus on ourselves and recognize, you know what, I have some mess. I'm going to deal with my mess and rather than look at the evil in others, look at the evil in ourselves. Yeah.
And I'm very messy, so maybe it's just easy for me. I will say this. We have some questions because we have the most wonderful regular viewers. We have Miss Vivian. Always awesome to see you. Susan Roberts is also a delightful person who's also familiar with Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. And of course, our absolutely favorite viewer from the great state of Hawaii, my dad, who says, Michelle, that you made an excellent point about not wanting to communicate. And he says that he thinks that describes much of the current politics in the country, in this country, to name but one country, and that he admits that he is guilty of it himself sometimes, or even a lot of the times. And I will say that, in my opinion, this book serves as an initial, maybe anecdote or attempted anecdote to our own selves. Did you feel that way? I mean, I've talked about this a lot, Jose. Like, did you feel like it was a call to action internally?
Yeah, I think I agree with that assessment in terms of, because it's just make you think of your own biases, right? Because even when I was reading, I was thinking, what actions that I have taken that would be considered to be this hate, or what was the word that you used, Michelle? Strongly dislike. In and it's kind of it's interesting because you start thinking, you start analyzing the actions that you have taken in I think I have many. um so yes, I think this book it give you the, it's just put the information forward for you to think, this is what I'm doing, there's a way that I need to change to be better, right? Because it I think it goes with, you have to change yourself first in
Mm,
order to do something for the community, right? Because it's definitely, it's for me, it's kind of um, difficult how we are in this country right now in terms of the politics, in terms of ideas of how much hate is out there, or how separated we are in terms of the other person or the other group, right? And so, in order for us to change the sense of what's going on in this country, we have to expect every single person to do a self analysis on their actions, which is difficult. Um, but to me, it actually make me think the actions that I have taken in the past, or things that I said, or things that I did, that it's more of a self reflection of it,
mm-hmm.
of your own person.
Yeah.
And yes, and I thought many actions that that I have done, and unconsciously, or it's just what we get from society. Is like sometimes we internalize it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. She says here, in big and small ways, consciously and unconsciously, we constantly filter the world around us through the lens of our explicit and implicit biases. And we've constantly said, Kyla, in everything that we've read, is we've got to use an equity lens. And all of the work that we do in Prince George's County Memorial Library System is, we apply an equity lens to everything that we do. And yet, we still all walk around in this world with our biases, and we know we have them. Everybody has them, but that's how we filter the world. And we really have to turn on that equity lens, I think, and internalize, well, not internalize, it's figure out what's happening with us internally in order to be some good in this world. And so I started by saying I don't think I hate anyone. I think I have probably expressed, in according to her definition, expressed hate. And now this book has caused me to really think about just how I view some things. It's maybe it is hate. I hope not. I hope not. I still like dislike because it feels better, but it feels so much better.
But probably maybe I would say that I don't hate somebody. I might hate the way they think,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're not hating a person; it's just you're hating the idea
Mm-hmm.
of something that they are saying. So because uh, I when I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, I think I done some not hateful thing, because it's just, I think it's what you internalize, you in a certain area, or then you do certain things, right? I mean, that's something that you get from society about violence here, not, so you do certain things. um but but I was thinking, do I hate somebody? And I couldn't think of a person that I might hate I might hate a president, not the person, but the actions, right? So you hate the ideas of it. But then your mind start thinking like, maybe this is too much, but it's like dealing with COVID, when COVID started, right? And the actions that were taking and the things that were said, and then you, for a moment, you thought, wait, why this person doesn't get it to kind of have the experience, right? So is that like is a hateful thought about trying and thinking like, you hope that somebody gets something in order for them to change actions? But then that after that person or somebody got it, and then that still did not change the actions that they still continued. So I don't consider that I hate a person. I just probably strongly dislike their ideas.
Okay.
That probably it's just, but I just that I couldn't find a person that I hate after I kind of finished reading the book. I know that the ideas are supported by certain people, a certain group.
So Jose, since you come to this revelation, could you sit down with keep the person in mind that you strongly dislike their opinions, their viewpoints, their philosophies? Can you sit down and have a genuine conversation with them, with the idea that I like this person?
I think I think I would. I think with the knowledge or with the idea that certain people act certain way in order to get something, right? And so probably, with the idea that some people are not that way, but they're using that as a route or as a tool to get to what they want. And so probably, yes, I think I would. I wouldn't I can't promise a time frame because I don't know if that would be a limit in terms of, I would say with this person for an hour, or I can, because I don't really know if I could be there for an hour.
Okay.
I just want to, interject really quick. I'm sorry for interrupting, but for those people watching, if you have any questions for us, you can ask us the most difficult question that you possibly have, because I'm pretty sure Jose and Michelle would love to try and handle them. Put them in the chat and we'll try and get to them before we're done. I'm gonna get banned from the show if I keep talking like that.
So I know, I think if somebody's gonna get banned, it's just me.
No. I don't think so. So I'm wondering for myself how long I could sit. And especially if they don't allow my voice into the space. So if we're sitting and it's only because they haven't read the book.
Wait, but are you arguing? Or are you just talking? Like, hey, how's it going? How's the weather? How's your kid? How's the grandkid? What did you do in school today?
Someone who, as I mentioned earlier, somebody I would probably avoid sitting down with. And this person, we have a difference of opinion, and previously we would have never had anything in common to discuss, and now I'm willing to discuss, but I'm at one stage because of the revelations I've had after doing readings and trainings and so forth, and they have not. Can I bring that to the table, knowing they aren't, even though I know they aren't where I am, because they haven't done the self work. But am I in a place where I could just sit and listen?
May I say something that I think that one thing that if you have a person, if you know this person that, but I think one thing that would work probably maybe it's giving them a gift, right? Give them a copy of the book,
Mm.
right? If that is a person that you see but don't interact, because you already read the book, you're a different level, right? In terms of understanding what it's hate and how you already personally identify, you can analyze it, you can do a self analysis of it. But that person hasn't. So maybe could start just providing a copy of a book of this book, for example, and given the opportunity to read, and then be able to have the conversation. I think that would work.
Yeah.
Now, if you, I mean, I'm this is just an example. If you actually see this a person that you strongly dislike, and you want to feel better in a way that, you know what, this is not helping me, and after I read this book, I self analyze myself, but that's what I think in terms of providing something so they can learn, so they can identify themselves, because maybe they're not on the same level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We have a couple questions. Our friend Ms. Vivian is wondering where she can get the book. So first of all, of course, you can always take it out from our friends at PGC MLS, and you can also, there you go, and you can also get it from your favorite independent bookstore. I know that our friends at the library work closely with Mahogany Books in Prince George's County, as well as with Loyalty Books, which have branches both in Washington, D.C. and in Silver Spring, and they will ship to you if you wanted to order from them online. And hopefully they could help you get it. It is really great. And Mark from Hawaii wants to know, does this book address hatred of self at all? It seems to me when we beat ourselves up, remembering past mistakes and cruelties, and Ms. Vivian's jumped in here too, saying, when we remembering past mistakes and cruelties, hatred of self can become an issue. And Ms. Vivian has shared that she beats herself up when she hates. So I guess my immediate answer, if I may, is that the book does not talk about self-hatred, but my experience of the book was that it was very gentle. So when I read it, if I remembered incidences of cruelty, which of course I did because I've been cruel, instead of feeling like I'm a terrible person, I at least experienced it as being like, it's kind of a guide to do better tomorrow. And I think that I found it quite gentle and not self-accusing. I don't know, Michelle, Jose, how did you experience that?
I agree with you. I don't think it talked about self-hatred, but one of the statements I was looking for, it says, hate is no more hardwired into our world than it is into our brains. Change is possible. So I think if any takeaway is self-hate is something that we can change. And she doesn't tell you how, but there are other books that would do that. I think this is really about healing the biases that exist. This is how do you go about healing the hatred that exists in the world because of implicit and explicit biases, and how you go about doing that in a way that is that makes sense for both parties, I think.
No.
Yeah, and I think it's for me, it's just the information that she was provided. You just make you think about your personal actions, but not necessarily, you know, I think it just make you think about your personal actions by just reading the information and the information and the experiences based on the interview that she conducted. So that's why it was very good book for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was it was a great book. And we've done we are out of time. So I just want to take a minute and say this is our third year of doing this series. And when Michelle and I finished a book at the end of the first year, we read a book called Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And after we talked, we both agreed we wish we'd started with that book, that it was so foundational to the work that we do. And I agree with that. And I'd like to add and say that I also think this book is really a foundational book.
Mm-hmm.
And my reason for saying that, and I just kind of want to summarize, I think this is something that Michelle, you and I have talked about over and over again for 3 years now. People have heard us say the same thing. And at least from my point of view, what I often say is I actually don't have much control over the other person, but I have a heck of a lot of control over myself.
Yep.
And that is so empowering. And so we talk about recognizing our own biases or trying to grow or get to know people who aren't like us. And I truly fundamentally believe that is not only the way that we can change the world, it is the only way that we can change the world. Mm-hmm. And I think that this book is just kind of a guide to kind of help moderate those challenges that I certainly have, in terms of othering and judgment and hostility or superiority, or you name it, I carry it, in my heart. And I don't want to, right? I want to try to make the world a better place in my own little way. So that's a summary. I hope everybody reads the book. As you saw, you can get it from the library, who are awesome, pgcmls.info. If you don't have a card, you can get one. They'll also hook you up with a virtual library card, which you can get even if you live in Hawaii. I do want to let you know really quickly about some other events. The library has tons going on. Please visit them at pgcmls.info/events. They have 3, 4, 5, 7, 9 events every single day, covering all kinds of things: language, tutoring, children's story time. I mean, I think you have like a knitting club. I mean, they just do it all. They're amazing. And then our agency, you can always also check out what we're doing. And specifically on Thursday, with our friends at the library, we are having a keynote Earth Month address with Ben Raines, the author of Ben Raines. And so we certainly hope you join us for that and all of the other wonderful things we have coming up. Our diversity dialogue is taking a little wee break, but we will be back in August. So we will not see you for the series in May, June, and July, but we hope that you stay with us and come join us on the last Tuesday in August, September, and October as we continue this work. So thank you to Michelle, to Jose, to everyone tuning in. You guys are awesome. I love seeing so many familiar faces. Susan, Vivian, my dad, you guys are awesome. And of course to Pam, who's done all the hard work for us backstage today. Thank you very much, everybody.
And Miss Vivian, thank you. She gave me a compliment and I can't chat. So, so I'm just saying thank you to what she complimented me on.
Oh, I can say that. I can say that out loud so everybody can hear it.
No, you don't have to.
Michelle has lovely hair. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.